Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Friday SLO talk. My name is Jarek Janio. I'm the faculty coordinator from School of Continuing Education at Santa Ana College. This morning, we are going to talk about Canvas and record keeping for assessment of student learning. This fall, we have already talked about how to pay attention to student learning, how to identify skills, competencies, and students need to attain in instructional process. We talked about direct assessment as a tool to observe what students can do with the skills and competencies that they acquired. And this morning, we are going to talk about how to keep record of assessment results. This activity leads to generation of student learning assessment data, and this is what puts learning at the forefront of our daily activities on our campuses. One point about the assessment of student learning data is that it's not a number that can be generated by merely enrolling students or helping them progress or even complete courses. None of these will tell us anything about what students have learned. And when you think about it, that data can be generated without even talking to students. Assessment of student learning data is to inform instruction and learning. So before we start talking about technology-based solutions and bells and whistles, databases or visualization programs that we can afford to purchase, we should have a roundtable discussion about how these tools can help us document and project what students can do with what they've learned. Just imagine a dashboard displaying skills and competencies that students acquired, or a visualization showing attainment of critical thinking, communication, problem solving, group leadership skills. This is still very much a challenge for many of our institutions, and we are here to make one more step toward making student learning visible and relevant to our faculty and students. With that, we have a fantastic lineup of speakers. So let's welcome them, hear about their experience. Enrique, good morning, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Enrique Jauregui. I'm the SLO coordinator from Fresno City College. So you can see the moderators. We have Jarek, Tricia Wiggins from Long Beach City College. Hi, Tricia, how you doing? And of course, myself. In front of you, you have the agenda, the presenters. If you would introduce yourself, tell me who you are. Let's start with number one, Marcy. Please unmute yourself.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Marcy Drummond. I'm the vice president from Los Angeles City College, and I'm VP of Economic and Social Mobility and Innovation.
Thank you. Welcome, Marcy. Dr. Harper.
Hello. Good morning.
Morning. Introduce yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Rachel Harper DeLupio. I'm a chemistry and chemical technology instructor at Los Angeles Trade Technical College, and I'm very excited to have gotten to participate in the EON-XR project.
Welcome, Dr. Harper. Linda, I don't want to butcher your name, please.
I'm Linda Delzite McIntyre, and I am working for Marcy Drummond at LA City College. I am helping with the coaching and the accessibility and the Canvas integration for the MetaCity. And prior to that, I was teaching at LA City College and running the academic technology area.
Welcome, Linda. And Athena from Reilly College, a sister college. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, my name's Athena Gibbs. I'm a counselor instructor at Reilly College. I was the former program SLO coordinator for our large counseling department. And prior to working at Reilly, I was at other sister colleges in our district at Clovis Community College, also as a counselor and over the HBCU transfer agreement there.
Welcome, welcome. And last but not least, Dr. Jared Vince Nix.
Just Vince is fine. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm Vince Nix. I am currently a core research methodologist and an assistant professor at West Texas A&M University. I teach research methods in the doctoral EDD program online, but I have more than, let's just say that 20 years experience as an administrator. And I have worked in community colleges for several years, and I served as an interim president as one in Montana. And I've used all the learning management systems. Right now, I'm kind of in a competitor for what you're talking about, but I'm still going to talk about how to document what I do. Thank you.
And I believe, do we have Joe Letty? I think we're missing him.
He's not here yet. I don't see him.
Okay. So
He's going to be, yeah.
My apologies if I, Jarek, if I put him on, it was not on the agenda. All right, with that being said, I believe the LA is going first, right, Jarek?
Yes.
Okay, so we have both a presentation and a video to share. We are presenting on our new foray into extended reality for learning, and particularly how it's being used not only, we believe, to greatly increase student success and attainment of student learning outcomes, but also how it opens up the door to additional ways of assessing and documenting students' learning and competencies. Next slide, please. So today, the three presenters are, we introduced ourselves, Dr. Rachel Harper DeLupio, Linda Delzite McIntyre, and myself. I basically coordinate, we call it MetaCity, our extended reality learning program. So I'm the one that administers it and coordinates it. Linda, as she said, serves as a coach, but she's also our expert on Canvas integration and accessibility, among many other things. And Rachel is an instructor that's been working in extended reality to bring learning in a new way to students. Next slide, please. So just to level set what we're talking about, the difference between when we say extended reality, we're talking about all of these. Virtual reality is where many of you, where you're put into an entirely new world. Augmented reality is where an object is inserted into your existing environment, and you can still see the existing environment behind it, but an object is within your environment. And mixed reality is really a combination of both real and virtual worlds combined together. Next slide, please. Many of you have probably already experienced both. Here's some examples of augmented reality systems that are already in use. Pokemon's probably the most familiar one, but many people are now starting to buy products where you're inserting an object into your, like a couch or a chair in this example, into your living room to see what it'll look like before you purchase it. Next slide, please. And then also virtual reality, also many of you have probably already experienced that as well, but here are some examples that I think most of us are familiar with. Next slide, please. Particularly, the benefits are extremely useful for the younger generation, Generation Alpha, who grew up where their learning style is very much a virtual learning style, and they like what appeals to them is real-time in situation types of experiences. But you can see for Generation Z and Generation Y that these would also be great learning tools for them because this is their style. A recent study by McKinsey and Company looked at consumers ages 17 to 70, and even 70-year-olds were familiar with the metaverse, and their number one intended use in the next 5 years. On average, they said they intended to spend 4 hours in the metaverse every day. And besides for entertainment, the next highest reason that these individuals said they would use the metaverse was for learning. So there is an appetite for extended reality for learning. Probably the appetite is there because of this. It's a natural way in which we learn. We experience the world in 3 dimensions, and it's only logical that it would be that it would be a more effective way for learners to learn. Next slide, please. Researchers shown that there are many benefits to immersive learning. These are some of them, because learning can be done within context. It definitely engages and motivates students more. It can be used to mimic real life and present real life scenarios. And it's a safe place for learners to experience things So a lot of our faculty, for example, have created safety sort of lessons where they're experiencing something in a virtual environment before they actually go and experience in the real environment. Another study has shown that the effect on brain activity, this is for augmented reality, that actually it increases levels of visual attention. It elicits a surprise response that motivates students, and it sustains that level of motivation. And what is experienced in augmented reality is encoded in memory at a 70% higher rate than traditional, more normal ways of presenting information. Next slide. This is on virtual reality, a study that showed compared the outcomes of students that learned in a traditional classroom, except for the last one, that's online specifically, but you can see the outcomes were much better for students who did experience learning in a virtual reality environment versus more traditional classroom or online methodologies. Next slide, please. There are lots of approaches to extended reality for teaching and learning where you can customize, have something custom built for your college, your discipline on one end, to the other end where the users completely start from scratch and develop things their own. We're right in the middle between the pre-built and the user created, what we're using in MetaCity. So faculty bring pre-built objects into a platform, and then they use those pre-built objects to build lessons and experiences around those objects. Basically, because of that approach, the use cases are limitless, both inside and outside the classroom. This is data from our first semester using it. We had faculty that were using it in over 65 different subjects and courses that ranged from English to anatomy to electronics to chemistry and everything in between. We now also have staff who are part of the fall cohort of faculty and staff that are using extended reality, and they're starting to develop use cases for outside the classroom, such as career exploration. Next slide, please. What our program features is we really have focused on both providing the adequate support for faculty and students, as well as a focus on student learning outcomes. So we do have a big professional development program. Every faculty member is assigned a coach and a peer mentor. They're put into peer groups where they meet monthly to learn from each other. We have a modeling and support team that helps build the 360 environments and the 3D objects. Every faculty member is issued XR equipment that they can use to build their lessons. On the student learning side, we've done a lot around mapping student learning outcomes before the lessons are built. There is a quality rubric, which you'll see in a minute, where the peers review each other's lessons using this quality rubric. And there is a big section on that rubric around student learning and student learning outcomes. We do a lot around accessibility, and Linda will cover some examples of that later. And then last but not least, we do both faculty and student assessments, both formal and informal, on the use of XR and how it's impacting their teaching and learning. Here's just a comparison of do I keep going? This is where Rachel takes over. Sorry. This is where Rachel takes over. Yes.
So as a chemistry instructor, it's really hard to translate the two-dimensional images that we have to teach. And I don't think my video is working, so hopefully I'm moving around. I built out and had a huge amount of help from the EON mentors in building out exactly what I wanted, which was really spectacular. And there's some complicated concepts, like what you're looking at on the left is a Lewis structure. It's a schematic of how a molecule is put together. And we do this right before we go into drawing and looking at three-dimensional structures, but that's always for really simple molecules. It's one central atom with a maximum of 8 things attached to it. And that's not where my nursing students are going. They're going to be working with large, complicated biomolecules. It's not where my Chem 101 students are going. They're going to be going to organic and like synthesizing large, complicated molecules. So EON was hugely helpful, and the students are excited because it's a new toy to play with, but there's a lot of learning that comes from it in tying this two-dimensional schematic, the molecular geometries that we learn totally separate, all together into one big molecule. The module, the little bubbles you're seeing on the molecule, are bespoke orbitals that Anthony at EonXR spent a good number of hours helping me figure out how to incorporate in Blender. So just participating in the program was kind of instrumental, because I now have 5,000 additional resources where when I'm trying to explain to someone how two things are a mirror image of each other, I now can go build it out real quick in Sketchfab and like put it in the NXR, or just use the resources that I've now learned I have access to in the internet, in Sketchfab. It was really, really instrumental to building things out. So in this module, they walk through, they rotate the molecule, they look for specific geometries that they would be recognizing from the number of lines attached to the letter or the number of dots on the letter. And we now translate that to a three-dimensional shape, which is going to inform how the lipid bilayer forms, how molecules pass through a cell wall, what areas of a molecule are more open to having their atoms replaced. And it's been really, really helpful for my Chem 101 class. My Chem 102 class was sad they didn't have it in Chem 101. And I just ran it last night with my 51 class, and I'm getting feedback that it's been really helpful for them. Under 51 is our pre-nursing chemistry. It's been really helpful for them understanding the shapes that we're working with. Next slide. This Linda Delsite, Angela G did this really spectacular. I was actually really amazed at the pedagogy. She took a 360 image of a hospital room and then didn't just label things, because I think realistically what's really awesome about the tool is we can do what we want with it. And faculty who's really devoted to students achieving their outcomes is always looking for a tool that lets them do that next thing. In Angela taking this 360 image, she didn't just say, let's tour a hospital room. She embedded clues that nursing students who need to observe, they need to make observations, could look at an arterial fibrillation. There's notes on the board on this patient's affect and mood, right? There's a bedpan on the floor. There's all of these things she's embedded that students could observe to make a diagnosis. So it allows us to sort of freely let students apply the learning outcomes we've been trying to train them up to, but in a more organic, open way where they can ask questions, they're engaged, rather than giving them a multiple choice test or asking them to recite back or work through a problem on paper. It's been really, really wonderful. Next slide, I think, is Linda.
So Linda is going to queue up a short video. I just want to draw your attention. In the video, you'll see several lessons that were created by faculty. In them, you'll spot when they have assessments that are embedded within the lessons. Linda, we can't hear.
Sorry. Let me start all over again with a new share. I'll get it right this time. And share and take it back.
So we're all always trying to look for innovative ways and creative ways to help students achieve their educational and career goals. And virtual reality is a great platform to get those students involved.
At LACC, we are committed to providing all students the opportunity to engage in immersive learning experiences. MetaCity is a faculty-driven approach whereby immersive learning content and experiences are created by faculty that are high quality, accessible, and promote equitable outcomes. The most amazing thing about XR is that students will be able to access rare content that is typically very costly, and content that is, quite frankly, difficult to access. Imagine that they'll be able to fully engage with this type of instructional and learning material at their fingertips.
The ability to put AR models in the spaces students are in, for students to use their phone as a viewport to move through a space. The physicality of walking around directly engages students. They're in control of how they look at this thing. So it's the difference, if you're an art teacher, between showing them a picture of a sculpture and taking them to the sculpture, to explore it freely in 3 dimensions. I can do the same thing with chemistry. I don't want to show them a picture of the molecule. I want to take them to the molecule. I want them to have the molecule 6 feet high in front of them so they can explore it from all angles. And that's only possible with AR/VR.
In healthcare, you're exposing students to the actual clinical environment that they hope to work in one day. They don't have access to that from a basic classroom. So you're giving them that bridge, or that filling that gap between the basic foundational knowledge you're learning in the classroom and linking that to the actual career they want to enter.
MetaCity has provided coaches for faculty as well as individuals who help to create objects that faculty may need in their lessons.
I feel the tools that I have been given and given access to are very effective in increasing student engagement and student learning. And I found that the program provided me all the support that I needed, and support I didn't know I needed.
In XR, you are fully engaged. And what students have reported to us is they want to see what's coming next.
So overall, the student feedback was really positive. It really brought together a lot of the concept they've learned throughout the semester and pushed them to the next level.
I believe it improved learning and engagement for my students, as the students that took part in the exercise did better on their final assignments than students who did not.
So AR and VR really changed student retention and engagement. It's shown in many peer-reviewed studies that the student retention goes up.
They like something that takes it off the page. They like something novel that gets them engaged. And then they really did form a deeper understanding. I got really positive feedback from the students.
This type of educational enhancement will be demanded by so many people who are accessing information. We want to be at the forefront of that.
I'm excited to see where students go next, what students start asking us for, and where MetaCity goes next with expanding the toolkit that teachers have available.
An instructor can bring a class in so that they can do something in XR. A group of students could meet in a smaller room so together they can develop something in XR in the maker's space. What learners will be looking for is to be able to access content how they want, when they want, and where they want. That's how they access entertainment content now. I believe it will be the same for educational content. So we have to respond, and that is forward thinking on delivering things such as XR so that they can access information and education anywhere, anytime.
I'll go back to share the slide deck again.
While you're sharing the slide deck, there was one question in the chat, and it seemed very simple, but it was a question about an acronym. What is GFC? So maybe you could answer that for the sake of that person.
I wasn't aware it was in the slide deck. I'm wondering if it was on one of the video lessons.
I think it was in the very first couple of slides when you were just opening the presentation, but there wasn't maybe too much time.
Oh, okay.
Another comment in the chat said, I think I figured it out, global financial practice. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I think I pick up from here. I do think it is the students' ability to engage and interact. So being able to, and my students, when I roll this out for my Chem 51 students, Chem 51 is a foundational chemistry class. They're not going to take chemistry again. They're moving on to biology and microbiology. So seeing it in 3 dimensions is really, really helpful. And it also allows me to introduce them to a bunch of 3D anatomy models that are going to help them out hugely when they move on to models of the cell, to models of the neuron, to models of the eyeball that they can explore further. So it allows me to give them additional tools. I can no longer see, is the screen blurry for everybody else or just me?
No, it's okay for us.
Okay.
So,
I did see improved learning outcomes. They were anecdotally, and oh, there we go. The students were greatly engaged. They were able to translate the Lewis structures and the 3D models, and I saw larger engagement and greater understanding when we meet in office hours, when they took their exams on the 3D modeling, on molecular structures, on predicting hybridization of orbitals, which is always a challenge, right? For any of the chemistry instructors trying to explain hybridization and have it stick, and for students to be engaged and think about it, I always find it really challenging to make sure they're actually understanding it and not just memorizing a pattern. So it was really, really helpful to be able to model those orbitals in my lesson on the actual molecule and see how they overlap and see how we need this hybridization to make this bond. Everyone else I've talked to, the students have had a really amazing time with this. And it really is student-centered. Thank you, Linda. It has, students want to engage, they want to play, they want to touch. Under COVID, that was always a challenge. Now that we're bringing them back into the classroom, I don't know about anyone else, but coming back from COVID and going in person, it has been an uphill battle just for learning loss from students being moderately engaged for the last 2 years. And so something where they really can go through, solve a problem, play with a 3-dimensional model, come back, report what they're finding, talk to each other about it, help each other out actively, the same way we could with molecular models, but I'm teaching a hybrid class. So it's been really, really amazing to have this tool. Does anyone, Linda, do you have anything to add about the badges, or Marcy?
These are the statistics from spring 2022. We had over 1,100 students that participated in the program from what the teachers actually took out to their classes. And at that point, we had 385 who had earned the self-orientation to AR/VR digital badge. We are now almost 600 that have earned that digital badge.
There's a question that John put in the chat, which I just wanted to address. So he's saying that we normally show Lewis structures in the chemistry classroom, and we do. We show Lewis structures. We show them flat images of a 3D model of a simple molecule. If you're a really, really engaged instructor, you might expand that out to a larger molecule. But I'm really excited to be able to overlay the orbitals that we show them separate from Lewis structures, separate from the molecular models, in one place. And I think that as chemistry instructors, I could use ChemDraw to generate. John, I'm not trying to sell you on Eon XR, right? I genuinely think that this is an excellent tool. And I understand instructor burnout on new tools and instructor burnout from 2 years of actively having to think of the new way to do things under our new model. But I genuinely believe that this has improved my students' learning outcomes. And I don't personally have time, now that the entire backyard is lit on fire, I don't personally have time for models and tools that don't help me teach and get to my learning.
okay, can we go to the next slide, Linda?
Okay, so our Eon XR is an LTI within our Canvas. So this gives us an immense ability, since it's not just out there that they have to do a link to. So if there are questions, self-assessments that are done in the Eon lessons, they come back into the Canvas gradebook. Because of the LTI, the students don't get their own accounts that they have to log in, do an ID, password, forget all that stuff. It just clicks the button and they go over and open up the lesson. The teacher gets statistical data on the student work. The day, the time that they enter, the time that they spend on the lesson, the percentage of the lesson that they complete, and the number of attempts that they make on the lesson. This is our lesson quality rubric. So we look at the objectives and whether or not they're concise, they're written in student-centered language using Bloom's taxonomy or not. Are the resources varied? Does the asset get enough description function? Do they look at the analysis, the higher order of critique and importance of that model, of that 360? Do they apply it to the lesson, to the student learning outcome that they've already identified? We look at how many assets are on the models. the lesson activity order and interaction opportunities. Does the lesson flow? They have to have an EAP, which is an equally effective, accessible lesson plan for each of the EON lessons or the AR/VR lessons, because they're inherently inaccessible due to the technology. So we look at whether or not the lessons are equivalent, whether the descriptions are accurate, whether they're accessible, they meet all the ADA 508 standards. We check both the Pope Tech and the Canvas accessibility checker to see what errors are there. Because we go to such an extreme on insisting that everything has an EAP, we have found that more than half of our students actually use the EAP because they faced technology issues at some point. It might have been their wireless, it might have been their computer went out at a particular time. They needed a rush to get in there and look at something. And so because of that, even though they didn't have visual, hearing, or mobility issues, they used that EAP in addition to the AR/VR. Okay.
I want to say something about the second stat. 47% of the students did both, and there was a recent study on extended reality learning, and it found that student outcomes increased greatly when they experienced the lesson both in traditional manner as well as in extended learning combined. And it's interesting that 47% of the students chose on their own to use both methods.
So we make sure that the alternative lesson, as we call it, is available all the time and not just given to those who request it. Students will go to it sometimes because it's faster if they need it to meet a deadline, but they do go into both of them. Not having to ask for the alternative lesson avoids any stigmatization, that they don't want to admit that they need it, that they don't see well, that they don't have good internet, don't have good equipment. And it removes the barriers to achieving the student learning outcome because it's available to everyone. So we teach the teachers how to create this alternative lesson. So it's pretty simple in my mind, and that is you take all of the essential content that's found in the AR lesson and you put it into this Canvas page. So if there is an image, if the image turns, if it separates, explodes, if there's a video, if there's a link, all of those individual pieces that are critical have to appear in the alternative lesson. Then you make each one of those content pieces accessible. And some of those are very unique and challenging, especially when we get into the music arena. And you're looking at sheet music and you're looking at notes on sheet music and how to do some of that accessibility. Obviously, Rachel did some really great things with her visualization, and actually it was animated what she did with her molecules, and those also had to be made accessible. And you can't do that just with simple alt tags. So the audio information that was in the AR lesson just becomes text on the page, and it's pretty easy to put that around your images, put it into tables. The video, we had to make sure that the alternative lesson had accurate captions. We worked with Eon and they made all of the YouTube captions appear in the virtual reality lesson. They did a lot of work to help us improve the software to make it more accessible. And because the visual is so stressed in the Eon lesson, we had to make sure that the self-assessments in the alternative lesson were not visually based, but were based on what was the intent of that information? Was it a process? Was it a practicality? This connects to that. What was the use of that part of the lesson? Rachel?
Perfect. So this is my EAP, and Linda was instrumental in making this accessible. I'm using Eon as a supplement to the normal teaching. This is not replacing going through the models in class. It ties everything together. And so if anyone's ever tried to alt text a Lewis structure, this is not a simple task, right? But it's helpful in teaching the students the carbon numbering convention, in describing step by step. When we wrote the full description of the image in the EAP, we used the same way that we would describe each carbon in a Lewis structure, each oxygen in a Lewis structure, and called out our bonding, called out what is appearing in this Lewis structure. And so my students did use both. They would go through the EAP and really highlight the key pieces and play with the guided lesson in Eon, turn the orbitals on and off. This is one page of many pages of images and videos. Students were successful at this. They understood what it was saying. They understood the lesson objectives, and we really called out. This was for my 51 class. So the goal was to understand a tetrahedral, a trigonoplanar, a bent, and a linear structure in a larger molecule, to be able to translate the Lewis structure to the three-dimensional model that we're looking at and the geometries that appear from the bonding types that we have.
Okay, Rachel, is your lesson queued up and ready to go?
Yep.
I just
Okay.
want to do a time check. So at this point, we were going to pull up the actual lesson so you could see the different components and then open it up for questions. Are we okay on time to do that?
Yes, I think so. So far, so good. Yes.
Okay.
Excellent. Share sound. Yeah. So this is the lesson interface. As students come in, they receive an introductory message, and then this is going to take a minute. Okay. Then we go through. So we start with just looking at an image of the Lewis structure. And the message prior to this is you're going to look at an image of a Lewis structure. As you're looking at the Lewis structure, please,
for more complicated molecules, like the ones that the
walk around the model, turn the model. It cues them up that they're going to be looking at a Lewis structure. And what I want them to do next is try to rotate this and match the Lewis structure and look at the geometries inherent to the different types of bonding. So they walk through, you're able to embed really easily assessments, and they're simple assessments, but I'm going to show you a three-dimensional structure of a tetrahedral. So for non-chemistry instructors, this is normally what we would show them as a model of a tetrahedral molecule. They're then asked in a quiz and a quick assessment to identify all of the tetrahedral shapes in this molecule. Can you find the tetrahedral shapes now that I've shown you the model, now that I've shown you a two-dimensional image of a tetrahedron, and I've shown you this model, can you find the tetrahedral shapes? Can you find the trigonoplanar shapes? And so this is just a quick assessment. Can you translate our two-dimensional image to a three-dimensional model? How many atoms in the molecule have a tetrahedral geometry? We work our way through the different geometries and finding them, and then Eon allows me to do a guided lesson, a 3D playback narrating, this is your tetrahedral geometry. We can tell it's tetrahedral because there are 4 things attached. And so this was initially set up with the ability to expand to more complicated ideas in Chem 101. And this was where the Metacity team was hugely helpful, because I wasn't interested in just building a molecule like John is saying in 3 dimensions, which I could have done separately. I wanted to be able to show and hide orbitals, which are how atoms hybridize their orbitals in order to bond. And so this took a bit. This is custom built, but I had a huge amount of support from the Eon team to learn Blender and to be able to turn orbitals on and off to highlight what I want to show the students. This is, let me find C1. So that this allows me to show students how orbitals hybridize, how they overlap to the best of my ability to blend it out in Blender. And normally when we're talking to students about like pi bonding, we're saying we need parallel orbitals. We're not going to hybridize these p orbitals so that they can form pi bonds. I can now show them in 3 dimensions how this all aligns, how this falls into place. And when I was trying to do this online, which is when we built this out, or in class, I run out of arms to show the number of pi bonds. So it was really, really helpful to be able to incorporate this. And I'll be running this next week with my 101 class to really bring home hybridization and how we think about a p orbital that's unhybridized versus a hybridized p orbital. The students can go through this self-guided, they can come talk to me about it. I've used Eon to build out a separate lesson for safety, but the overall, as we're stepping through, is show an image of bent molecular geometry. Ask the students if they can find a bent molecular geometry in the molecule. Give them a quick quiz, an easy assessment. Can you find the bent? And there is one. Yes, good job, me. Oh, sorry for the huge feedback. And then we go talk about why that's bent. We walk them through the bent geometries that they're seeing. In my 101 class, we'll be talking about the hybridization required to have a bent geometry. We'll be talking about the orbitals that appear there. Does anyone have any questions about the model while I have it up? I also want to be respectful of everyone's time.
Yeah, so I think in general, we can open it up to questions more broadly about the tool and how it integrates with Canvas and how the assessments work and anything else.
Jamie has a really good question that's kind of chemistry specific. Do they cover resonance? I haven't built out resonance. Essentially, the nice thing about Eon, is you can build whatever model you want. So this model, I went into Avogadro and built, then went into Blender and added the orbitals. You can add animations. That's a standard part of Eon. So you can build out an animation. You can illustrate resonance. I used animations to turn on and off the orbital because I didn't want a giant bunch of orbitals showing. I wanted to highlight a specific hybridization for a specific geometry. But that's been sort of the amazing thing is I can build out whatever I want. So I can add it and I can build out resonance. I can build out hybridization. I can build out any model I want, upload it to Sketchfab, take it to Eon, and incorporate it in a guided lesson for the students. That is important to me. I do not want to be constrained in my teaching. I have students who have learning disabilities who found this really helpful because it's visual. Hi, John. And I'm sure Linda and Marcy have stories of other students who've used the extended reality as a learning tool. Visually impaired, we definitely leveraged the EAPS and writing really clear descriptions and asking students to make the next step from the information they were given in the EAP. John, I'm guessing you have a question for me as a chemistry instructor?
Oh, sounds good to me. I'll lower my hand. Yeah, I guess I wanted to ask, because this caught my attention. The fact that you can show the orbitals, showing orbital overlap, the ability to show whether you can or will create double bonds and so forth. Was this an original a program that's purchasable, or did your school or yourselves create this? I'm not familiar with it. That's why I'm asking.
Are you talking about the orbitals or Eon?
I guess it's Eon. What's on the displayed now, where you can show.
Okay, no, I made that, and I am so passionate about like students not getting through chemistry, but actually understanding, which I think a lot of instructors are, right? Like it's an abstract field. Students treat chemistry as a thing they have to do. Let me just memorize the answers, right? And so how many times have you said, just write your freaking units, everything works if you would just try to engage and not memorize the answer, right? Which is a hard thing to break them up. So the orbitals I built out in Blender, which is free, using Avogadro, which is free.
Right.
And I built the molecule in Avogadro, built the orbitals in Blender, and there's 9,000 tutorials, but it was awesome because normally I would be navigating this on my own and trying to figure this out on my own and trying to balance figuring this out with everything else I have to do as an instructor. But working with MetaCity, I had someone who has years of experience in Blender and described, this is what I want to do. I'm not happy with the models available to me. I want to expand beyond this. I don't want students to just click on a molecule. I want them to be thinking more deeply about this, and I need this tool.
You
and
mean
had-
critical thinking then, is what you're really incorporating, right?
Yeah, that's my entire life's focus, is to
Yeah.
get people to think critically about
Critical,
things.
you're right.
So,
Yeah.
so
Thank
more,
you, thank
more,
you.
yeah, just briefly, more generally, what the platform does is you have to start with an object or a 360 environment. You can find pre-built ones in a library, and then you start to build. What the EON platform does is it allows you to build the lessons around it. So to embed videos and audio and do quizzes and all that, but you have to start with an existing object or an existing environment. And if there isn't one existing, we can create it, and there's tools that we give to our faculty to create objects as well as 360 environments. Like the
Thank you.
hospital room, that was from scratch as well.
Mhm.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. You're more than welcome to stay and answer the questions. We have Athena from Greeley College.
Thank you very much, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Absolutely.
Athena,
Thank
you
you.
ready?
Yes. Can I start? Okay. I'm sorry, I just tried to start sharing quickly. Oh, goodness. Hold on 1 second, I'm sorry. I thought I was ready.
And LA, you can answer some of the questions in the chat if you don't mind. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your wonderful presentation.
So I think I'm doing this right. Okay, I'm sorry. So I was explaining to Enrique, I do have to, so I may go a little fast because I actually do have to teach today. I am coming from student services. So for those who, we say counseling over here, our background is a little different than advisors, but I am coming from student services. So I'm going to kind of go through a little fast. It seems like Canvas has been covered at the SLO Talk before, and I know that. But I wanted to give you a little bit of an experience of what we decided to do. We started over with a SLO assessment and built community, as you can see. And to give you a little bit of background for our counseling department, we have about 7 courses. The one, I'm only going to talk about one today that we built out, and that is the College Life Development course, our Counseling 53. And that is because we have a lot of sections of that class because it meets a GE area for us. So I'm going to talk about that one. During this time too, when we decided to do this, we were going through a transition of going from, I believe, 4-year PR to a 2-year PR. So our program review is pretty frequent. And so we were looking at a way to do this that was feasible for our instructors and the SLO coordinator at that time. And so I'm just going to go ahead and get started. All right. So building an assessment community, I put that as step 1. I'm a counselor. I'm all about building community, and that is huge. And I feel like when we talk about SLO assessment, that gets skipped over because we need to have buy-in by our faculty. So I'm just going to talk about some of the things that I did to get that. Determining method of assessment and setting the criteria, developing the assessment, how we went about doing that for our department. Using Canvas outcomes to collect the data, which has been so helpful, and the review of our course data. So, hold on, do this. Okay. So to build community, like I said, to me, that is like really one of the biggest important thing when we're talking about SLO assessments, to make sure that our faculty, all faculty, are on board with the SLO assessment process. So for me coming in as a new person to really at that time too, was to really get together with all the instructional staff. Because again, we're counseling. So we have most of our counselors are seeing students. They are not instructors, they're not teaching, but we have a core set of counselors that do teach. So really communicating with them throughout the semester. getting their input, constantly getting their input and feedback for our choice, our assessments, and pretty much all aspects of the process. Um, Input and feedback on the feasibility. Again, that was a huge piece. We're going through a PR, 2-year PR cycle. So what would be easier for them as well as me? And reviewing the assessment process and going over all this stuff because again, they're counselors, not instructors. So going through that process. Determining the method of assessment and setting the criteria. I'm going to go through again this stuff a little fast. Instructors provided the input on current assessments used. They really were already telling me what they were already using to assess the outcomes. So we looked at that stuff first. We started there. I wanted them to come to the table with all that stuff first. And we ended up deciding on a course embedded assessment, something that was direct assessment. And we developed our own, and it was a comprehensive quiz that everybody decided that would be more feasible for them. And it was a short answer quiz that we used for, again, this is our counseling. This is one of our classes because we had to do this a little differently for the other ones. Our counseling 53 class that had a lot of sections and a lot of students. We have classes of 50 or more in some of those sections. So we determined our criteria, and this was carried over from our last program cycle, and that was 70. We're going to end up increasing that because we did meet all of our SLOs. You'll see that later considerably. Faculty determined the administration procedures, and that's what I kind of got into on a right side here. What exactly the when, the how, what exactly we decided to do. So we were being consistent and on the same page because this had not been happening prior. There wasn't really a lot of consistency with our assessment process in the student services and especially the instructional side. We decided that we were going to assess all of our counseling 53 courses because we needed that data that particular semester, but moving forward, we weren't going to assess them every semester, but we wanted to get all that data up front. To develop the assessment, again, I got input from all of our instructors. We had about 7 to 8 instructors that were all involved in this process. Excuse me. And I had them submitting questions for the quiz. We all met together to determine which questions we thought would be best, that would best measure the outcomes. And I developed a rubric so that we can all be consistent with that process. And so this is just the rubric. So it was a grading rubric, but also the SLOs were attached to it too. And that it was consistent with the Canvas rubric, but a little bit more information to the instructors as they were grading. Using Canvas outcome data. So this is just a process. If you're not familiar with using Canvas with outcomes, how to attach, and they keep updating, which is great because the first time I was doing this, it wasn't as easy. So they do keep updating and making this process a little easier every time. So this is just, you go in and you're going through this outcome link here and finding your outcomes. So we also use a Lumen. And so you do have to push those outcomes in, or you can type them in. There's multiple ways to get these outcomes into Canvas. So this is just showing after I started to add, this is one of those areas they made it really easy compared to before to add the different outcomes into the Counseling 53 class. I could just go through before where I had to go in and out a couple of years ago. So this is made it a lot easier. Again, just showing some of the steps. So again, we decided to use a comprehensive quiz. So getting that rubric, how to find that rubric and create the rubric. And this was our comprehensive quiz rubric. So the top part, I just took a snapshot of, it's a long rubric, but I took a snapshot where you just see the top part was the grading. So this was actual grades. There were points assigned to it. I did not want any points assigned to the outcomes. So you can do that with Canvas and not be able to, you can still grade, put in the outcomes and not get additional points because you're grading those outcomes. All right. Grading student and rating outcomes. So this is just an example of some of the questions and the attachment of the outcomes to it, the rating, the rubric, excuse me, to it. Some of our data, it went really, really smoothly, and something that we're going to continue to do because of ease and feasibility for our department, especially as a student service department. And many of our instructors are also seeing students too, so they have dual. I was the only one that did not, and I was only teaching. But most of them have multiple things that they're doing. So this worked out really well. We were able to get a great snapshot. This is only course outcome. This is obviously not for all of the courses. And so it shows you exactly whether you met, gives you that average score, whether you met your outcomes in the area or not, which was great because our instructors provided me with the expert data. Now we're at this point where we have a different system, and Amanda, I know, has already talked about it. She's part of the coaches crew here, and she's talked about what she's done. But at this point, we didn't have this. And so they sent all the Excel, and I was aggregating the data, the Excel sheets, but now we have a system to do that. Before we did actually aggregate the data, using Canvas was just so wonderful because it started conversation. And that was the big piece. And that was the big piece that hadn't really been happening before for our department, particularly around instruction. We're so focused on seeing our students one-on-one in a counseling relationship. So it was really great to get the conversation started about what do we want it to do moving forward in regards to changing instructions and assignments. And particularly, we had one SLO that was still met our criteria of 70%, but it was a little lower than the others. And we started meeting, like, what can we do? What kind of assignments that we can do to improve that connection between cultural awareness and goals. Then improving the quiz questions, that was a big thing, just so that they're clearer for the students. We're definitely going to increase the criterion level for our SLOs moving forward because we met all of them. And more training in regards to using the rubric for each of them. I think that was the area that we needed some more of. And developing a satisfaction survey for indirect assessment too. So we had our direct assessment, but we are working on the indirect data as well for those same classes. So this just gives you just a little insight in the data that we met our SLOs 93%. Our average was 3.65 out of 4. Our N was 200, so this was out of 200 students that completed. We had a really, really high rate because it was an actual assignment. It was an embedded assignment. So we had a high rate of completion. And that is pretty much it. So if you have any questions, please feel free. I'm always happy to talk student services and what we do and what we're trying to do moving forward. I am going to stop sharing.
Right on. Thank you so much, Athena. I know you have to go. I just wanted to tell you that I do love the building community aspect of your presentation. That was just absolutely fantastic. It's just so important for us to build this commitment and really support for one another. So thank you very much for sharing. And yes, we hate to see you go. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate being here.
Of course.
Right.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Athena. Thank you. Our next presenter, Vince, next. You ready?
Yes, sir. Let me share my screen and we will continue rolling.
Take it away.
Thank you. I've enjoyed everybody else's presentations, and it's made me think of some connections about what I'm going to be talking about. So I had a long career in student services, and I was always interested in student development learning outcomes, not just Bloom's taxonomy types of things. And so I've been investigating affective learning, and I'm going to say that a little bit different from maybe what you've heard. I'm going to try to remember to say affective just to make it different, because every grammar checker, spell checker wants to correct this all the time because we don't use it. And my purpose today is to get people to start using the affective learning domain, right? and to consider it anyway, and to make sure that we differentiate that between the cognitive learning domain, and then perhaps recognize the value of formative assessment as learning, not just for learning. So to start with, I will just go over what is the difference. The main thing is, as you see, the top level there, that's a state of mind. Whereas in the Bloom's cognitive taxonomy, whichever one you're using, updated Anderson, whichever one, it's an intellectual task that we ask students to do. Here, we're wanting to shift an affect. An affect, you can consider it to be a state of mind, or a mindset, or a disposition. So when you think about things like a growth mindset or grit, those come under mindsets. They're non-cognitive, right? They're not purely cognitive things. And so this is what I'm looking at, and I'm looking at a way, this comes from the words, and the thing here comes from the second handbook, The Affective Learning Domain, from Krathwohl, Bloom, and Meja, back in 1964. And this diagram was created by my research partner, Misty Song, as I was explaining what was in the book. And so we've got this in a publication. I'll show you the reference list in a little bit. But basically, what we're trying to do, and what we've learned through our research, is that until we get people at least up to that 3.3 level commitment, they're not going to change their mindsets. They're not going to have a shift in mindsets. And so I was trying to develop a rubric to match the book, right? I wanted to do this for many years. I've been investigating it as a student development professional for many years, but then when I got a chance to be a researcher, I spent some time in it, and I said, oh, I want to develop a rubric. Well, it was really tough. And so as I was trying to do that, I ran across one, and I'll show you the header from that in a little bit. But I want to go over what each of these levels really truly means. So first, the base level there, if I can get students to recognize that I said something, or they saw something, or they heard something, or I know that they actually listened or read what was there, I can say they have received my message. But I have to have evidence for that, right? And then the second level is a response. Now, in the original handbook, what Krathwohl, Bloom, and Meja said was students need to have satisfaction as a response. What we've found is that's not enough, but there needs to be an emotional response, and I have to be able to identify a student's emotional response to the learning activities for that week before I can actually say, okay, they're responding. If I don't see an emotional response, positive or negative, I can't say they've responded. Then when I go up to valuing, here's where Bloom in the handbook, Krathwohl et al. 64, they say affect is a collection of values or value sets. And so what I see is until they've started saying, okay, what you told me is acceptable, I can start to think about that as something important. And I can start to look at it as something maybe that I need to know. Once they pass that and say, yeah, maybe this is something I need to know, then they can move on up here. But unless they get past that valuing, and it's the 3.3 in the handbook commitment, we see there's no shift in mindsets. And I'll tell you, I've got over 5,000 cases so far, almost 5 years. And it's an interesting thing for me in research terms, and I'm going to try to stay off the research kick just a little bit and explain what this is. And so organization, what that means is I have evidence that the student has actually decided to implement this into their professional or personal or student lives, academic lives. And what I mean by that is if a student says to me, I am going to put this on my calendar, I am going to a tutor because I need to learn this more. If they have indicated they're going to do something, this is important enough for them to reorganize their lives, their schedules, to learn more about this, I can say they are organizing this into their value system, or their sets of how they see the world, right? And then the top, we're wanting to see them, And my research partner, Ms. Song, says she wishes that they had named this top level embracing, because until a student embraces what we have said in the classroom, they're really not judging the world according to that. But literally, characterization means I'm characterizing myself, my organization, or my academic performance based on what you have explained to me in this learning activity. And so for me, if I write an affective learning outcome at the top level, I would say, and what I'm going to show you the data from in just a bit, some examples, it's from a strategic planning course. I want the students to characterize their professional roles, their professional settings, according to what they're learning in the textbook when they do reflections. And so how would I make a rubric for this? That's what I was trying to do. And I see somebody had a question. So if you want to ask me those, I can't see the chat box while my screen's full. I'm happy to answer questions on the way, or we can wait till the end. It just depends on the type of question. I will defer to our wonderful moderators in that case. I see a red dot, but I can't see the chat. So I'm going to keep going unless you interrupt me. And then go, okay?
Don't worry. We'll track the chat.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Okay. And so I was trying to make a rubric, as I said, and I was doing some research and reading things about, nobody had really looked at the affective learning domain for many years, but interestingly, we had some health science people in here before me. Those are the people, the specialized accreditors are starting to say, we want to assess mindsets. We want to do this. And so I found a group of people down in Victoria. It's Dr. Rogers. You see there I've got a reference list for you in a little bit. They developed the Griffith University Affective Learning Scale, or the GWALS. And what they did was assign, it's an ordinal scale, as you can see, they assigned scores. They developed a rubric. I can't show you the rubric. I have permission to show you the header. I recommend I'll show you the reference in a little bit. If you're interested in this, contact Dr. Rogers. They are wonderful to work with. You just need to sign a non-disclosure agreement. And here's the kicker. Students can't see this rubric if you want it to be meaningful. You can't say to a student, hey, I want you to write an essay, a reflective essay, and try to hit characterization, because they'll write to the rubric. What we want is organic reflection. This was designed either for you as a health sciences educator to go in the classrooms and observe what the students are doing, how they interact with patients, or just to categorize reflective essays according to the rubric. One of those two ways is the reason this thing was designed. And so we score, once we see an essay from a student or observation from students, we categorize their behavior or the reflection according to those levels. They have a 6 there on the rubric, and it's called moving from organization to characterization. That's a really tough one. If I had, and I know Dr. Rogers is not here to defend, so I hate to even say anything, but one of my feedbacks to that team is that is sort of a fluffy category. I think it's there because I've had 5 different people across the country coding this, and that's the one that's our weak agreement right there, that number 6. So how did I do this? Well, I put a test in the learning management system. And it has several questions, a couple of 4 or 5 multiple choice questions, then 2 open-ended text questions. But the last one is a reflective essay. And I asked them to just reflect. Here's what it looks like within the learning management system. And it's as I said, it's the last question on this weekly formative assessment task that I have students to do. And they get bonus points for this. Now, I have done it both ways. I've included this so that they can get points. I've had it worth up to answering all 8 questions up to 15 points a week, or out of 1,000 points, or bonus points. So right now I'm doing bonus points. I want to know if it's a difference in response rate. I get 87% response rate. It doesn't matter what. So just right now, the way I'm doing it is this question is worth 1 bonus point. And this is what they see. And it doesn't matter what they write, they get that point. If they write at least 75 words, they get that point. I just want to know how, if they reflect, I can categorize it into that GWALS rubric. And so that's what they see. Now, just so you know where I'm coming from on this, these are from Kirkpatrick's Levels of Evaluation. These are online courses. Simonson et al. Says, hey, you should incorporate the 5 levels of evaluation into online coursework. So I've been using that, and I only use levels 1 and 2, right? There are 5 levels. I'm just going to show you those so you know what they are, but I'm not going to talk about anything mainly except level 2 today. Did they learn it? And I want to know, were their mindsets changed? Did they shift their mindsets from the first week until the last week of the course? And so you saw that's the main thing. Reflect on the most useful constructs from the course learning activities. That's my level 2 prompt. Now I want to give you some examples of how we code these. So if I have no evidence of affective learning, so this is the student quote here. And it's not the entire reflection, but we take out the most important part that we can code to match with that rubric. So there may be a lot of other things talking about. Most of the time, students will say, oh, this week was so tough. I didn't have time to do this. I'm sorry, I'm late on something. Or, I didn't really have time to reflect until today and blah, blah, blah. They'll preface it, or, hey, this was an interesting lesson. But the core, what we code to show for evidence, is all I'm showing on the screen today as I flip through this. So you can see this one says, there's no really reflection about what they learned here, right? The student is saying what I found about this. It's like thoughts, but it's not even an emotional response. They're telling me, I like it because you made us write specific things, and my peers can't just say to me, I agree with what you said. So it's really nothing about the lesson. So I say, well, okay, I don't have any evidence that the affective learning occurred from that student. Then I go into receiving. And you remember, I have to have an emotional response on this. So the key word here is interesting. I'll just give you so everybody can look at that. So if I see something that looks like an emotional response, and that's as far as it goes, then we classify that as, yes, I can demonstrate they received our message this week. Then we get up to the responding, right? Or I'm sorry, this is So this is when they start to say, oh, wow, I'm looking at this and something's going on here, right? I'm thinking about this seriously. You see, I saw something earlier about strategic planning, but I never thought about it. But now looking at what I'm learning through this course, there's a lot of stuff involved in here. I'm going to be fascinated to do this, right? So this one is talking about the emotional response to the lesson, not the emotional response to other or the way the course was designed. That's the difference. Even though the student said the word interesting in the previous slide, it wasn't about the content. Here, the emotional response is about the content of the lesson. And so when they say it's truly fascinating to see what's going on, comparing it to what we're learning, then I can say, okay, they're responding. They're thinking about what we're telling them. Then valuing. Here is when the main thing that I think is important here is students begin to learn something about themselves. And here, this student absolutely tells us, I learned that I was a top-down person. And when I'm looking, and the top-down or bottom approach was a heading in the textbook. And so that's the students talking about, when I saw that section in the textbook, it made me think, maybe I should ask my direct reports for some input, right? And so we can see that person has noticed I was doing it the other way. Maybe there could be a different way to do it, a little bit better way to do it. And so that's when we start to see the valuing. We learn something about ourselves that's not exactly in line with what you're teaching me. And so then organization, remember, we're talking about, I'm planning to do something. I'm taking time from what I used to schedule and making this different. Here, I'm eager to learn, right? I've taken this stuff, I've shared them with this was an interesting one to me. I won't ever forget it. I've shared it with my husband because they were opening a new business. There was more details that I remember about this than I'm showing here. But this person also said, when I was looking at my district's mission statement, it's not on the main webpage. Every school has one on their own webpage, but the district doesn't have one. And so she's beginning to compare, but she hasn't judged that it's not a good thing, right? So I can't say she's categorizing, but she's noticed it. And she said, I'm going to use this personally in my own business. So she's organizing her life around making sure that her husband even begins to learn tenets of strategic planning. And then the top, you see, I talked to my director about creating a strategic plan by combining what we're learning in all of these chapters. And you see here, we're behind in this area in our organization. But here's what I see that's interesting to me. This is an emotional response that we would call contentment. Contentment is when I'm satisfied that I've learned enough that I can go teach somebody what I've learned. That's the strongest emotion that we found that resonates and comes through in our coding of these qualitative essays. But this person says, I feel I have enough foundational knowledge now to lead my organization through a strategic planning process. That is characterization. My organization is not meeting what we are learning, and I think I can help us do it. And I've already talked to my boss about it. So those are the kinds of things that we look for as we're scoring in this rubric. And so all of this is in a test, right? In the learning management system, it's documented there. You put a score on it. So they get a bonus point there, but then you can, like we use a separate system called Weave. I heard somebody say a different one, but you can add your learning outcomes there and then attach these scores. And so, for example, I hope 70% of my students get to level 4 on that GWALS rubric every class. And I want to increase that every term, right? And so that's the way I would document whether or not my learning goals have been met. So I want to pause here for questions, and I have some more slides in case people are interested in the research findings, but I'm not going to dwell on those unless you ask me. So I want it to be as open as we can. And so if people have questions, please.
Ben, quick question. So are you moving comprehension to understanding? When you say
go back to that slide.
Yeah, yes.
What was the question again?
Are you moving comprehension to understanding? When you categorize the activities according to the complexity of learning, right?
Oh, well, so this is one thing I didn't say, and I've done this with undergrads and I've done it with community college students. This is a doctoral course, so all of my cognitive learning outcomes are at the top 2 levels.
Oh, okay.
So everything is, this is right, online EDD program. So everything for us to get Quality Matter, all of our courses go through Quality Matters. I'm a Quality Matters rubric certified. So we want all of ours to be at the top 2 levels. We may have like one understanding or comprehending thing at week 1, but we can't put those learning outcomes in our courses and get them approved at the doctoral level. We have to have focus on the top 2 of the cognitive taxonomy, synthesis and creation. Some analysis. I'm sorry, I was not understanding what you were saying. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. It did.
Yes. So all of the cognitive learning outcomes are at least at analyzing, but most are at synthesizing or creating.
Vince, from your perspective, yes, I do have a question that I think is very, very important to our discussions here. Is the part about the reflection. What's driving you to keep it going? Why does it matter to you? And I would like to know what are your findings? What is it that students are telling you? Is it in line with your expectation as far as your teaching and their learning? Is it something that you find useful, beneficial to improve as you go along?
Okay, so, all right, you're asking me to tell you my North Star. I almost put that in one of the first slides. Thank you for that question. Great
Sure.
question. So I'll show you this list of references while I'm talking. So when we began to implement these, that's what the first article is about. No, we didn't know what to expect. And this was a new course in the curriculum. And that was one of the reasons I started doing weekly formative assessment, because Schneider and Preckle said in 2017, when you put something new in the curriculum, you ought to do frequent formative assessment to make sure students are understanding these new courses and how they fit into the curriculum, right? And so that was my beginning purpose. The North Star for affective learning for me is because mindsets are so critical. I've seen mindsets being the mediator for attainment of cognitive learning. So if I don't have a mindset that says this is important, I'm valuing this, if I never get to that, I'm not going to put the effort into creating and understand, all the way at the top of the cognitive level. For example, my research partner, Misty Song, was over a collaborative learning and tutoring services. She said in her tutoring accreditation, they have to show that students appreciate diversity. She said, absolutely, students appreciated diversity, but when I observed them tutoring, they were nervous around people who looked different than them. They were afraid when they tutored athletes. So they didn't have the mindsets necessary to actually do tutoring that was helpful for the student. It was like an invisible barrier. And so we want those mindsets to be that we're shifting those to say this is valuable. One of the other things is about equity, diversity, inclusion, right? DEI stuff. One of the things I found as I was going through this is, especially during the pandemic, the women who are in our courses had much more to do, even though they were running schools and the men in the classes were running schools. The women had much more home re-accountability kind of activities to go on, while the men were only focused on their organizations and trying to get back to normal there. The women were doing it for the organizations and for the homes. And I'm not just trying to throw shade on all men, right? But I'm telling you, this is what we saw, and we've got 4,000 something cases of reflections. Well, for the pandemic, we've got about 1,500 of them for that really heavy part where the onset was, and these are K-12. A lot of these are K-12 leaders. They weren't ready for moving online, right? And so the men focused on the organizations, the women focused on both equally, the families and the organizations. And one of the things that we saw was one of the activities was about the glass ceiling and what that means. And it was quite fascinating when they reflect and there's no rubric to write about. It's organic reflection. It's absolutely still there. And most people don't think about the glass ceiling at all. The other thing was men became defensive about that topic. Women were like, oh, wow. Some of them had never heard of it, which I was shocked to know, but men became defensive about that. And so but the other thing, the very last thing, that last article there, it has increased dialogue between me and each student. I can tell you that I am more engaged with individual students than I would be if I taught face-to-face, by virtue of having them reflect and me responding to those reflections each week. And I try to respond to everyone. I do respond at least a sentence or two to everyone. But it starts conversations and then they get comfortable. It reduces the power differential between the instructor and the students by doing these weekly formative assessments. And then so you ask the last part of you, this is the 5 things that they see. Learning activities were effective. This is the first part before you see that open-ended. So they rate these. Strongly agree to strongly disagree. Each of these 5 statements. And I keep those, track those. That's automatically done every week in the learning system. I just put this statement there and they say strongly disagree to strongly agree. They give it a rating. That's it. And so they get, I convert those to numbers and do median tests on them. That if anybody wants to do this, I'll share the slideshow with you later. But here's what we see. If students think the instructions are clear, that impacts the attainment of learning outcomes by 5%. Now, it has been up to 13%. That means if I, as an instructor, don't write clear instructions, I am not giving students except for 87% of what they need to be successful in my course. And when I first got that back in the first term and it was 13%, I'm like, wait, I thought I knew how to teach. I'm Quality Matters certified. This course was approved by the Quality Matters people. But still, students didn't understand the instructions. And absolutely, 5% of the attainment overall, since I've been doing it, of the thousands we coded, it's still at 5%. If students thought that my learning activities were effective, that was responsible for 4%, right? And so you can go around there and see that. But the main thing is, and the big thing in the cohort is because of COVID. I heard somebody say learning loss. The cohort that went through these courses, there's 3 successive courses in all of this data: strategic planning, program evaluation, and then a leadership course. The cohort that went through of that onset of spring 2020 until fall 2020, their learning and attainment of learning outcomes was way less on those, scoring from reflections. And then we coded, I didn't talk about this, but since you asked me about the research, we coded for emotions and attitudes. And that's the big thing. So what I'm thinking I'm showing is that Krathwohl, Bloom, and Major were right. Affect is a set of values or value. It's a value combination of values or value sets and it's a mediator for cognitive learning. If they had negative emotions, the learning was so low. If they had positive emotions, the learning was so high. If they had 1 or 2 negative attitudes, it was crazy. It's still the same. It just drives me nuts to say. Now, I'm not advocating for controlling attitudes and emotions, but I'm saying if I can write my instructions so that they're clear and easy to follow and without scaring students and promoting anxiety, then my affective learning outcome attainment is higher.
Right. Makes perfect sense. Thank you so much.
And if somebody wants to scan that, that's a big reference list there for all the stuff and all the publications that I've used to put all this stuff together.
Sounds good. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. This is very, very important for us to realize that clarity of instruction and really accommodating students. That's just very well said. Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you, Vince, for your wonderful presentation. If you can stay and answer some of the questions, we're greatly appreciated.
Can we get the QR code again, if it's possible?
I'm sorry.
Can we get the QR code again?
Oh, yes. Sorry about that. There it is. And that's going to have a heading about presenting at the Assessment Institute. I was there a couple of weeks ago, but it's all the references for everything that I've done since I've started doing this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Vince. Thank you. I already took a picture of that. Thank you so much.
And I'm happy to send this to you if you want to share it as a
Can you please? And if you can put it in the chat also somehow.
Oh, can I do that?
If you can, please.
Yeah, I'll do that before I leave. I do have to leave like 5 minutes before the top of the hour. I have another meeting that starts at exactly the top of the hour, but I'll hang on and answer questions. Oh, now I see.
Vince, one other thing, when we scan the QR code, it says we need permission to review those resources. So should we just request access?
Okay, it's not supposed to do that. Let me log in right now and see if I can change that permission. I thought it was okay. Or I can just put the document in the chat if that's
yes, I was going to say that if you can do that.
That'd be great.
Much appreciated.
Okay.
Right on.
All right. So thank you so much. At this time, we're going to introduce our last speaker. Can you see me, the agenda? Dr. Joseph Levy, are you here?
I'm here.
Can you
Hello.
please introduce yourself and tell us where you're from and what it is that you do?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on since you all are for you West Coasters. My name is Joe Levy, and I serve as the Executive Director of Assessment and Accreditation at National Louis University. We are a medium-sized, private, not-for-profit, Hispanic-serving institution in Chicago. We have our main campus is in downtown Chicago, an urban campus, and then we have a few additional locations through the Chicago suburbs, and then we have one location down in Tampa, Florida. We have 6 colleges and offer degrees from associates up to doctorate, certificates as well. And in addition to my day job, I also serve on the board for the Student Affairs Assessment Leaders, which is an organization that supports student affairs assessment. And yeah, really excited to be here and talking about helping to embed and continue to allow it to flourish, student learning as a practice. It's the kind of thing that, from my stance, I always posit it as assessment being pretty universal. I don't really draw any hard lines or differentiations between, or even different standards between, academic affairs or student affairs assessment. They both have expectations of learning, the learning outcomes. They both have set interventions, courses for academics, activities, events, programs, documents, experiences for student affairs. And they both can have measures, right? Certainly in the classroom, those are tests, papers, projects. And for student affairs, those can be rubrics, reflections, surveys. And they both should be looking at how their expectations compare to reality and taking actions to look to make improvement. So just want to make sure and say that, because I know sometimes people draw some hard lines between those things, or feel like if they know one side of the fence, they wouldn't know where to begin with the other. But it's very simple. You always start with the learning outcomes and work your way through the assessment cycle. But one of the things that I've been able to do is I've worked at multiple institutions and been overseeing institutional assessment at many of them. And I think one of the things that's really important is trying where possible to embed assessment into the work, and reminding faculty and staff that assessment should be part of their work, and should already be part of their work. With faculty, it's talking to them about what they're seeing with student learning in the classroom, and how they can be using grades and rubric scores and interactions with their students. Even to Vince, as Vince was sharing, the reflections that you're getting from students about their experience, how you can be using that for formative and summative assessment purposes. One of the things I try and do in my role is to reduce as many potential barriers and limitations to the work as possible. So one example is I actually don't require a specific format for assessment plans or reports. And one of the things that I'll show you all here is our assessment page, and I just popped the link in the chat. At least I think I'm showing you that. Hang on, let's make sure I did that share pretty fast.
That's it. It worked.
Okay, here we go.
Okay,
you can see our multiple colleges here, as well as I even have the student affairs areas. But you can see they all have different plans and templates, and that's by design, because they all can have some different needs, and that's something that I'm okay with allowing for, then what I do is I pull everything together and synthesize it to tell one institutional story and to be able to compare apples to apples. But one of the things I didn't want anyone to have to worry about is for a given college to say, oh, well, this template doesn't work for me, or this format doesn't work. Great. Well, let's change the template, change the format, right? Like, let's not have something super simple be a barrier when it doesn't take that much longer on the back end, on my end, to make adjustments for that. Because what I do make sure everyone does, and I'm just navigating to this assessment approach tab, is this, right? That everyone has curriculum maps or outcome maps, that they all have annual plans, that they have some success criteria of what those expectations are for learning, that they do reports and that they take action, right? So as long as you do those things, I don't really care what format you do it in. You do it in the format that best works for you. And I've even seen within some of our colleges, some programs will do their curriculum mapping or their assessment planning differently than their colleagues, even under that same college umbrella. Fine by me, because again, one, it goes back to my point of this should be embedded, right? I mean, assessment should not be the driver for people having curriculum maps. And I'm always really surprised when that's the work that I'm helping lead for an institution. I, as the assessment person, am helping them develop their curriculum and outcome maps. I mean, that should be a program design component. That should be, something the faculty are working. This is supposed to be the blueprint for their program of what students are going to learn. So usually when I am leading that work, I remind them that it has utility well beyond for assessment. But again, when you have those things already built in, that's something you can leverage for assessment purposes. And with plans, while that can feel like an extra step to articulate a plan for assessment, you already have your courses in action. And by your curriculum map, you have and know what assignments are key or summative or end measures, as well as potentially developing measures around student learning for your program learning outcomes. So it should be a matter of looking at your curriculum map and identifying what you're going to really study and examine that year and what expectations you're going to set. And then, that can be your plan. It doesn't have to be anything super fancy, but you want to articulate and have a focus, because good assessment literature says you don't have to look at everything. You don't have to look and measure and examine everything all the time. It's okay to chunk it out and look at a few outcomes per year, because in order to best understand those things, you should have multiple measures and you should have reflections from students, from faculty. You don't put all your eggs in one basket, because then if students do poorly in that, or there's a glitch with the data collection, then you have no report for the year. And so again, all of these aspects of assessment don't have to be super formulaic or forced, or again, this top-down oppressive format that people have to fit for some extraneous purpose. Make it work for you. And as long as you have these things and you tell a narrative that makes sense beyond just to you, it's going to be great. And for the most part, it's going to work for assessment purposes. And I have this. This was something I made, and we adopted our institution. But really reminding people that assessment is continuous improvement focused, right? That we follow this loop, and please don't feel like this is a model you need to replicate. There are plenty of great assessment models out there and far more advanced than this one, but I intentionally did this and presented it to my institution because it can be this simple. Likewise, when you're talking about reporting, people don't need to stress out and feel like they have to do linear regressions and predictive models. It can be as simple as frequencies and modes and means. And so a lot of these common barriers that people can fear for assessment, like, oh, I'm not a numbers person, or oh, I don't know a ton of analyses. You don't need to know a ton around that. Likewise, another thing is reminding people why we're doing this work. And I think, when we do that, we can remind them what it's supposed to be, and also convey to them, when we're talking about assessment, it's usually shorthand for assessment of student learning. This isn't assessment of faculty. This isn't performance evaluation disguised in another process. I think sometimes that can be a barrier, as faculty or staff can worry that assessment's really just a gotcha game of trying to find a new way to evaluate them and evaluate their performance, when really, even if the numbers aren't meeting the target, the first assumption is not, oh, that must be a bad faculty member, or oh, that must be a bad staff member. What should be the first question is, gosh, I wonder what happened. Because we thought students were going to get this score, and we worked really hard, and we were very intentional in providing these resources and delivering this intervention. What happened? Now, all that being said, performance could be a potential issue. If a faculty member is just not doing their job, that can obviously impact student learning, but it shouldn't be our first thought, and it shouldn't be then the focus of this report on student learning. And so again, really assessment should be these things. It should be meaningful, impactful, manageable, informative, and robust. We can use assessment data for a lot of things. And so, I just wanted to come back to these resources, because I think it's important to not only then create these things, but also be transparent about it. It shouldn't be a secret what one college is doing versus another, and it shouldn't be a secret even to see like how other person puts together their assessment plans versus another, because it doesn't need to be anything fancy. And if it does look different, hopefully there's a reason why. And hopefully there's, it's serving another purpose beyond just assessment, so that, again, we're embedding this or working in ways that it is doing more than just meeting assessment needs, but being used for other purposes. So, when I think about assessment too, one of the things I should clarify is that for us, our typical process is we ask programs to set a plan for at the program level. And so they're assessing and reporting on their program, but that's going to be including measures from courses. We actually, at this point, are not, we don't have formal mechanisms and regular mechanisms for course level assessment of student learning. Obviously, we're taking data from certain courses to feed the program reports, but we're not taking something from every course, because as I said, we don't have to measure everything all the time. So it is something that we're thinking about as an institution, is how can we be making sure that not only are we looking at the program level, but also at the course level. But we take the course level content and let me show this quick. Can also help from a visual perspective. We really trace, our outcomes framework, right? So we take the course learning outcomes and we roll it up and report at the program level. And then I do a master report for the university learning outcomes. And as you can see, again, there isn't a big difference here. We see for the student affairs side of things, they have their office level learning outcomes. We have divisional learning outcomes, and then it all still rolls up to the university level. And so then what that looks like is, I put together a report where we can see the achievement across our university learning outcomes. And then we look at that, our university and our programs can look at that, each learning outcome individually. Oh, sorry. That's my external one. There's an internal one that has more functionality to it. So they can go in and, like, right now it's filtered for student affairs. And so we can see across 10 student affairs departments, there were 29 different learning outcomes or measures that were aligned to this. 60 of those met their targets. But we can also zoom out and just look across the whole university and see that there were 62 programs that were aligned to this learning outcome, 209 PLOs or measures. And we can see across the university, 88% of the time we were meeting our target for that university learning outcome. And then we also tied in, because we do the idea course evaluation, it has indirect measures, but indirect measures of learning that can correspond to our university learning outcomes. And so we roll those into this as well, and provide that university level picture that people can drill down to a college, to a degree level, as well as to a specific program or department. And they're seeing how their program performance is contributing to the university level and vice versa. But this is a way that we try and put everything together so that you're not only doing a report and seeing how student learning is happening in your area, but you're getting to see this full picture, and you're getting to see how all parts of the university are working together to support and inform and develop student learning. And it's important to have that transparency, as well as it's powerful, in a report like this, to see student affairs right alongside these other colleges and reminding faculty that learning happens outside of the classroom, and we can be learning from one another as we're talking about strategies around common learning outcomes, right? Like, I think a lot about ULO4, our applied and collaborative learning. That's happening inside and outside of the classroom. Students need to know that when they're working on specific projects, and just when they're working socially with one another, and and intercultural competency components. So this, by having this type of alignment, reinforcing it in a structure of our learning outcomes like this, but then also from a data perspective, we can be creating bridges across campus for people to be talking about best supporting students in ways that obviously relate to student learning, but then can extend to student success and potential collaboration to support one another going forward. I want to pause, because I've just been doing a lot of talking, and just let me check the chat, see if there's any questions. Oh, was that comment from Enrique about me or for Vince?
Yes, for you.
Okay, so how do we ensure learning took place? Yeah, so every area does a plan and collects their data. And what we do, here, I'll pull up another Power BI report. When it's course-based data, we're pulling it directly from our LMS. And here, I'll show you. So here's our, just open up the early education program. And so you can see these are the program learning outcomes. And we're getting this high level picture of measures at the beginning of the program, middle of the program, end of the program. Then if you expand this, you can see then specific measures for each and how they're performing on those. And then what we track in the background, and what we do as part of preparation and working with faculty and making sure, sorry, I'll just pause the share while I, so you don't have to watch the different screens as I get logged in. We work with them on the front end to look at their curriculum maps, think about their program, have them articulate targets around certain measures, so that then we can pull the data for them and we can calculate the numbers and share with them so that they can quickly see if we're meeting those expectations. So when we talk about ensuring learning, we're largely looking at learning in relation to the targets the faculty have. Right. And so we're expecting that they have targets, and if they don't, we're talking to them about what that can look like. So let me pull up. Let's see what was in.
Dr. Leg, are you sharing your screen now, or?
I'm
okay.
Navigating behind the scenes so that you all don't have to get dizzy. Okay, so I think it is the same program, early childhood. Yes, it is. Okay, so what we do on the back end is we look through their curriculum maps as well as their syllabi, and we'll pull all this information from all their courses and these measures, and so that then we can show to them, here's a given measure, and here's how it relates to, we're pulling it from our D2L. Here's a performance target for it. Here's then over here, all the outcome mapping to our ULOs, to the program, to their accreditor, to all the entities, so that we can, again, leverage this data for multiple things where appropriate. And, then we also then add any additional notes for analysis. But this is a way that, again, we help automate the process and can check these things and see what's going on behind the scenes, so that if they want to know, like, let's see here, like, I guess this one, like this EDU 305, like, why is it only at 87%? Well, what was our target? Was our target too high compared to these other ones where we're well over 90? Well, then we can go back and look at what the target inputs were, because it could be a lot of information to faculty just, know off the top of their head. But so we have this, right? But then on top of this, we have then the engagement with students, the conversation with faculty for their perspectives, as well as other potential data sets that may be informing learning.
Dr. Levy, there were some questions in the chat.
Yeah.
Regarding, is the data directly from Canvas for your program learning outcomes or dashboards?
Yes. So we are, and actually this screen is a good one to show you how we pull data from all sorts of places and put it in our data lake, and then we go fishing in the data lake and pull the appropriate data into our dashboards. And so you can see here, while this dashboard is made up of a lot of things, if you look down here, we can see, oh, let's only look at rubric measures, and let's only look at survey measures, and let's only look at, Peregrine is an external tool that our business programs work with. And because we can pull data from that system, we throw it in the lake, and then we, again, fish it out and put it together here, so that when you're looking at this report, it all looks seamless, and you wouldn't necessarily know that Peregrine is this outside external tool or system that we're pulling from, because we're presenting it all as one cohesive data ecosystem. And the other question is, yes, we do use D2L, not Canvas, but the good news is Canvas has the same type of APIs and data exports to get real-time data on course grades and happenings as D2L does. So you could do the same thing. And for, what I will say is, we have some colleges and programs that are newer, maybe don't have as many measures. And so this type of dashboard would look pretty empty for them. And so we do have some simpler versions, as I alluded, of some different types of reports, but we're still largely pulling the data from course assignments, unless it's a program where, like, their key measure is some external, like, licensure exam or placement test that is required for that discipline.
Yeah, we also, John has a question. John, would you like to ask your question?
Sure, that'll be fine. Yeah, my question relates to just college in general. If in fact anyone here has remedial courses, students are just not prepared for a credit-bearing course, and in my case, chemistry, because they lack certain sufficient skills that they should have attained in high school, but somehow, some way, I think there was a lot of social promotion that seems to take place, especially in the urban cities, and we find students really struggling. And so I'm curious if anyone here has classes as I described, and if they are assessed in the same or similar manner. So that's my question.
So I can at least answer quick from my perspective. So one thing is, we have a separate dashboard just for our general education, and we include in here, for us, we don't sort of separately classify and call what would be the equivalent of remedial courses remedial. We put them in with our gen ed courses. And so by nature of that, we can report on not only all those courses individually, but we also then group them by like department. So, you said biology, I think. So, we would look at then our respective.
Are these gen ed placing them in as general ed courses? They're still receiving credit for the course, correct?
Yes. So then
that's quite different than what we have, or what we won't have very shortly. It's going to go away. They want no remedial courses.
Yeah.
But we're still concerned, about student progress.
So we also then have, this was the other dashboard I was pulling up, our prior learning assessment dashboard. And while still students are getting credit for some of these things, in this one ACL 301 class, where students are providing, they're taking a course and they're writing essays to potentially get credit, you can see that students can be submitting many essays and not necessarily getting credit for all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a way where, directly to your question, we do pull this data and we can, filter it by, even like original essay, revised essay, did they get credit? And we have student demographics in here so that we can also then be looking at trends and performance along those lines. And then not only credit, right, but then even going a level deeper to see, okay, well, for elements of the rubrics that we're using, how's that performance looking? And being able to sort and filter that data. And what I will say for anyone who's like, wow, this looks really fancy, this entire dashboard is run off of one spreadsheet. So, and no automation, the only, I take that back. The only automation we do use is when we are capturing the information about the student and their scores, we have their N number. And so we do connect that to the data lake in order to get their demographic details. But that's the only automation aspect to it. Otherwise, all of this data is from, just tracking the spreadsheet, since our PLA processes are, don't have as much technological space in our systems at the university. But to your point, this is a way that you can still be tracking student performance in a pretty detailed way, whether they're getting credit for it or not.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Right on. Joe, this is fascinating. I tell you, this just really very well summarizes, I think, the intent of today's presentation to show how to make learning visible. And I just love looking at this visual. We'll probably stay in touch. We'll have you present some more in greater detail about this. This is just again of great interest to all of us. We are almost at the top of the hour here, so I just would like to end the recording at this point, and then if there are any questions or anything else